So... yeah, I'm kind of in the middle of fixing up someone's mess right now. Well, hey, figured I'd dedicate an entire gomotion episode to a brief history of this stupid little shit of a painted piece of plywood I call a backdrop eventually. Was the middle of a menial and relatively uninteresting, unchallenging, and ultimately trivial task. I mean, hell, it's probably more interesting. First started using this baby all the way back when I was screaming about stupid FNAF shit that doesn't matter how times have changed. Oh man, that controversial character design tweak from the whole neon ketchup vibe to making the thing actually pleasing to the eye. Yeah, that really ruffled a couple gears, huh? Burning people's retinas really was part of the charm. I mean, goddamn, the thing's been dragged through its own character arc at this point. We've watched it progressively deteriorate. That one time I talked about that one Disney game had supplies to fix said deterioration, conveniently spawn into our plane of existence, and hey, what says fixing this shit up like standing around and waiting to drop dead or something? Yeah, it's almost as if my refusal to instantly begin repairing this thing is just the setup to some weirdly paced comedy bit, so I'm gonna start on this mid-sentence, because if anything were to happen, I'd be totally ruining the pacing right now. Yeah, suck my gooch, ethereal gods. I'm gonna piss!
Yeah, hi, the name's Aspestose? Uh-huh, yeah, this looks like the place, alright. Gomotion?
I'm gonna coil my limbs around your human shell and sink my teeth into your flesh like a demented python!
Yeah, sounds about right. Increased aggression, you got some of that Mickey juice in you, right? It's usually a symptom.
I vomited that shit out!
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I had to. This rat bastard invited himself into my boat and wouldn't leave, threatened to cut me a Cobra-ass $5 million licensing deal.
And you killed him.
Naturally. Then that bitch mouse exploded and now I gotta split the knife. Wait, how'd you know about the yolk?
Oh, I'm sorry. Is the result of my boss's spontaneous combustion of a little inconvenience to you? You know, after you murdered him?
You're what now?
Yeah, I'm kind of one of Mickey's quote-unquote debt collectors. Serving justice, you know? Like, it's nothing personal or anything, I just hate you.
Yeah, well, suck an egg, hotshot. I got a video backdrop to restore. Piss on out of here.
Not so fast, Motion. You ain't off the hook till you do me a favor. It's either that or, die. I do this kind of thing all the time. Wait, what are you, a bowling ball?
What do you want?
Why, for you to review the greatest game duology of all time, 1-2-3 Slaughter Me Street, of course.
That is such a strangely obscure request. What the piss is wrong with you? 1-2-3 Piss on Me Street is a 2015 indie horror game. Apparently. Created by Nate Sanders and John Kolbeck of Impulse Game Studios, you play as a hardened criminal evading the police and find yourself in a cross between a one-way restriction to the X-axis and a jumpscare simulator. You stumble into an old building on the run, and after the roof collapses, your only way out is through a series of identical bullshit corridors equipped with nothing but a flashlight and a tendency for poor decision-making to fight off creatures simply known as the Puppets, canonically once part of a TV show created by Tim Denson. Yo, this game does actually remind me of this one small little indie series I'm a tad fond of. You might have heard of it. It's called Fred E. Fazbear. I don't know if that sounds a tad familiar. Could you get more on the nose with this? I mean, I get it. Take the cute kid-friendly real-life thing and twist and squeeze it till it's a crusty-ass pulsating spookfest adventure. Guys, Five Nights at Freddy's did it, why don't we? That concept, while a tad overplayed at this point, is never necessarily a bad one. There are a ton of fantastic examples of this kind of thing done right, FNAF included. Tattletale, Doki Doki Literature Club, Duck Season, it's a trope that can work flawlessly in execution if it's handled right. Taking something innocent and kid-friendly and making it genuinely scary isn't an easy task. And 1-2-3 Slaughter Me Street is just the best example of where that is. The logo, name of the game, Tim Denson, it ends up feeling like nothing more than a parody honing in specifically on Jim Henson and Sesame Street that takes itself way too seriously to be scary. Now hey, you're probably asking yourself, well gomotion, what about Duck Season being an obvious parody of Duck Hunt, you dumb noodle bitch? Jesus, tone it down, rude. Duck Season is very obviously a souped up duck hunt to the furthest extent it's legally allowed to be, but unlike Slaughter Me Street, this thing doesn't present the height of the horror at face value. Rather, it leads you in with the false pretense of Duck Season being nothing more than a self-aware tongue-in-cheek virtual reality expansion of the NES classic, only for things to gradually get weirder and weirder as time goes on, slowly unraveling the game's true intents before finally turning up the creep factor to max as things get heated. Tattletale is a tad bit the same sitch, an obvious horror parallel to Furbies, and while the horror isn't as effective as Duck Season's in my opinion, it does still lead in with a false sense of scale, tricking you into believing the game won't be nearly as creepy as it ultimately does turn out to be. Both games just as effective in their own right. Not to mention, both games hold a sense of in-universe believability, even with the horror removed. I could easily imagine a retail copy of Duck Season existing, or a line of Tattletale toys, and with that in mind, Yes, a lot of Streets enemies are just way too tryhardy for me, I'm so sorry. There's no rhyme or reasoning as to why these dudes look so janked up, they are just grossly overspookified OCs. And there's no build up, half the time you're right up in the face of most of any one of the puppets badly UV unwraps messes of a 3D mesh anyway, just totally obliterating the immersion. The jank-ass animations don't help either.
Hey, you want to get onto the gameplay anytime soon?
Not really. Gameplay time, shitlets! So each stage is almost identical to the last in terms of layout. It is a corridor, there are doors, and a couple splatters of blood and piss, I don't know. The goal is simply to reach the exit on the far end, doing your best to vigorously shine your flashlight at anything that breathes, or whatever the bitch this is. You've got 3 main enemies here, the follower, the greeter, and the waiter. Yeah, they sure get the point across. The follower takes a smelly shit, you gotta momentarily turn around and blind it to stop it from reaching you. The greeter pops out of any door it feels like and asks you for directions to your local Tesco, keep your flashlight on him to scare him off, and the waiter screams your Subway order back to you till you turn into the doorway it's yelling from. In concept, I mean, it's nothing particularly, exciting, but it's a tad interesting at the very least. Yeah, I'm not even gonna pretend my intrigue lasted longer than a couple minutes. By stage 3, once I was dealing with each enemy at once, things started to become stale fast, for a whole slew of goddamn reasons. Firstly, I absolutely had no clue what I was doing. The game mechanics are never clear enough here, man, with any and all instructions for the most part kept vague and confusing for absolutely no apparent reason. I'm guessing the thought process behind that was, hey, fear of the unknown, am I right? It's scary if the player's scared shitless because they don't know F3 pulls out a Glock. But to me, it just feels like the mystery the game is intent on pulling out when it comes to knowing how to defend yourself was purely a choice made in the favor of fear of the unknown, which in itself is never a bad element to capitalize on in a horror game. Well, the horror game doesn't, but that shouldn't apply to the basic tools at your disposal to deal with any oncoming threat. Figuring out the very basics of the hand you're dealt with shouldn't be a game of trial and error. Any and all of that kind of unpredictable shit should lie in the game's atmosphere and environment, with it being made clear as day how to use your tools to quote-unquote decipher the vagueness, not rely on a total gamble to figure that shit out for yourself. It genuinely feels like trying to figure out what the bitch to do was part of the game's core challenge, because once you do put the pieces together, man does the loop get stale fast. 1, 2, 3 Sesame Street is simple and repetitive, inherently not a terrible trait, that's an element a good majority of the Chucky Fazbear games boast, but here it's so much less effective, my guy. Each stage is just a different combination of enemies. It feels like there's barely any variation in aggression per level, it's just going through the motions till you win. Turn around, shine your light, creep along as slowly as the game will allow you in order to not run into the greeter or accidentally miss the door the waiter's gonna growl at you from. Yeah, gods does the game encourage you to deal with shit in some wacky unconventional ways. The greeter pops out of any random ass door it feels like right as you're about to approach it, meaning you gotta sparsely tap W to gradually inch your way toward any given door. Just include a toggle to sneak forward slowly, man. Speaking of movement, you can't walk backwards. The only way you're able to get rid of the waiter is if you hear them growl right as you pass the door. So if you accidentally wander a tad too far and the prompt to turn to the door disappears, uh-oh, sorry Socko, guess who's gotta hold forward to insta-kill themselves? You end up needing to strike the perfect balance between going fast enough to dash away from the follower, but slow enough to deal with the greeter and the waiter. The game's demanding 2 separate things from me, and okay, sure, maybe the challenge lies in finding that sweet spot, but that hardly becomes interesting when it is so goddamn easy to lose here. The difficulty balancing is ridiculous, I'm not even kidding. Yeah, the gameplay is easy to comprehend once you get the hang of it, but all the little nuances that feel totally out of your control, the way that there's rarely any feedback for when you perform tiny little micro actions that further aid you, this thing feels a tad broken and unfair and bullshit and dumb and bullshit. And when you do die, oh boy, Gmo Directo physics in front of a blood splatter PNG. And combined with the fact that for whatever reason each jump scare is totally random in length, I kid you not, at about 45 minutes in I snapped and ended up just holding W to turn this thing into a jump scare simulator, at which point I started losing my absolute shit at the pure ridiculousness of what I was experiencing. And the sweet holy pissing cherry on top of all of this, at the end of each round, exiting the corridor immediately snaps to a jarring pre-rendered cutscene of you walking through the door and down the stairs to the next room, where you can get yourself killed at the end if you don't flick your flashlight on whenever it turns itself off. It sends you all the way back to the beginning of the round if you fail this with no prompt, no indication that you have to do this, no hint of a... It's a pre-rendered cutscene! ABC Twist My Cooch ignores so many principles of what makes coherent game design that it drives me kind of insane. If the game's not tough as cock, it's stale and uninteresting. If it's not drowning you in a slew of confusing enemy mechanics, it's sending you on a dance with death to barter for stage completion. Even if it's not obliviously apparent, it's clear to me that FNAF and all the minigames that follow in its footsteps were a glaring inspiration for this thing at one point or another. And while I can at the very least commend it for doing something a tad unique with the tried and true cute and cuddly trend gone horror trope, goddamn does it kind of miss the mark in every area.
What the heck was that, gomotion? Yeah, 1, 2, 3 Slaughter Me Street is bad. Pfft, please, have you never viewed an original indie game before?
Yeah, of course I have, Oh shit.
You know what? I expected better from you.
Can I go now?
It's a duology.
Please, all I know is FNAF.
Well, you know what? I ain't trusting you on this one anyway. Give me that. I'll show you how to truly respect a franchise of this caliber. Ew.
Right?
123 Slaughter Me Street 2 is a 2016 indie game, also created by Nate Sanders and John Colbeck. You play as some stubble-ridden guy in a wife-beater, sneaking and crouching around his house to avoid demonically possessed puppety thingies for 10 levels. And boy, if you thought the designs from the first game were try-hard, oh boy, you just wait. We open with a little comic book styled cutscene. We see this guy working on a puppet with the lifeless husks of his past work laid on a drawer behind him. We also see a Tim Denson poster on the wall. And boy golly gee willikers, I wonder if that's even the teeniest weeniest bit es muy importante. We see his little girl walk down and seemingly get attacked by the felt-bearing demons. Then we start the game. This game's tutorial is the same as the first. It puts you in an enemy-less level as the dev of the game tells you the controls. Speaking of the controls, they are needlessly obtuse. Interact is F instead of E, and crouch is space. And the movement in this game is just odd. The game feels like it puts you like 2 steps further than where you actually want to go. The tutorial also introduces the strobe light infused gameplay loop. The game works on a loop of accomplishing and shifting to different objectives each night. The first section is pregame, which allows you to explore around the Unity Store asset looking house. The next is hide. During hide, you'll have to use your flashlight to see blue and green lights scattered across the ideal family home. You'll have to crouch in blue hide spots to suck out their hidey blue juices to get your green little juice bar to fill up. Once you drain the blue hide spot of its fluids, it will turn green and become a safe spot. The safe spots will shockingly allow you to be safe from the not animatronics. Once you're able to fill up on green fluid, then you'll be put into Seek. A bright pink line will appear that'll lead you to this bright pink spheroid doohickey. The line will go away after a while though, so you'll need to be quick in finding it. And after you collect it, you'll be put into exit and have to make your way to the exit and escape. That's the whole game, for 10 levels straight. The game tries to spice it up, mostly with visuals. An example is one level where they scatter around blue lights that look like the hide spots, so you have to turn on and off your light to be able to discern which are actually the hidey corners and which are fabrications. One is just putting a nauseating filter, one is just making the house darker, and one just puts blood everywhere. But that's a bit of a spoiler. The game feels like it's trying to be this tense and anxiety-inducing game of cat and mouse, but it manages to actually capture something about these types of scenarios that is often shied away from in video games, with it only being evident to those who have experienced situations like this in real life. The waiting. The absolute boredom of waiting for things to go wrong or for a chance for things to go right. Waiting for the snarls to pass by or waiting for the footsteps overhead to fade away. It feels like it's trying to cash in on the free roam FNAF fan game craze that was started by games like The Joy of Creation, but fails to nail down any of what made those games work. Instead of getting chased and frantically running about to complete objectives scattered across a map, you just sit in a hide spot, and once it goes green, you go to another hide spot, and again, until you get the orb and leave. There's not much substance to the gameplay loop. It doesn't even have the rhythm that could be found in the first game. It is not fun. This game was such a struggle to sit through, and as someone with a not so great attention span, this felt like torture. Let's talk about something more fun.
Like what?
Visuals! This game looks like dog doo-doo, but like fecal sins from your dog so you tolerate it. Don't look at me weird, you know I speak the truth. This game looks like a mobile game, but like from that era of cellular gaming where developers could only technically do 3D, but god damn it they tried. It reminds me of one of my mostest favoriteest mobile game video game experiences, 3D Cartoon Land Safari. Slaughter Me Street,
Yeah, when you gotta kill me or something? Come on, let's speed this up.
Oh, yeah, right. This game's environment looks like it borrows heavily from the Unity Asset Store. Don't quote me on that, though. You wanna, die? Speaking of transitions, the enemies in this game are glorious. We have this fat blue little shit that is the Seeker. The lanky, pink, icky, cooties-ridden cousin of the Greeter is the Greeter, parentheses, revenge, parentheses, and by the way, it actually says they're cousins in the Steam game description, and I'm not making that up. And then there's the Screamer. He looks like he snorted crayons and ate his own homework back in middle school. And just like the first game, they have different behaviors that distinguish them from each other. The Seeker will surprisingly seek you out and try to find you. The greeter, Revenge, will take her time and lurk around the dimly lit areas of the house. The Screamer will aimlessly wander around and scream at you to alert the others to your location, but you can't shine your light in his face to shut him up. But these differences are barely noticeable beyond the screaming of the screaming scream-susceptible Screamer. Everyone just aimlessly wanders around. They're all so dumb. Very dumb. Any threat that they bring arises from your own mind forgetting how brain dead they are. The most intimidating and scary part of this game is completing it, which leads us back to how this game is boring as hell. No. This is the greatest video game duology of all time. There has to be something I can praise. Something I can wholeheartedly say is great. Yes, that's it. I've got it!
Is it the fact that it doesn't want to shank you in the next 30 seconds? Like me?
The passion. It is very clear to me that this game had a lot of passion put into it. It's amateurish, sure, but you can tell that they cared. The fan art that can be found around the house. The puppets from the first game can be found strewn about and in different places each night, seemingly making their way upstairs from the basement until they eventually find their way to the couch. And the way that the story is told, whether it be the comic-style cutscenes that begin and end our story, the cryptic lore-filled bullshit poetry spewed by this red bitch. Once again, the fan art on the walls and the pictures of the developers framed in the bathroom. This all screams the story of people who were genuinely excited to work on a project and had real passion for it. Or heck, even the title of the nights themselves, telling the tale of a man in immense turmoil over some heinous action he's committed. A man called Tim Denson. That's right, that one guy that was name dropped on that one poster. Also, this game is a prequel. Man, they really did rip off FNAF. The second game being a prequel? I mean, hell yeah, totally original and cool and awesome. Ha ha ha. This game's story directly leading to the first with Timmy Turner over here running from the police because of the death of his daughter. You can tell they really tried to make a cool horror game with a cool story, which makes it all the more painful for me to admit that this game kind of blows.
And you know what, Aspestose? That's totally okay. We all misjudge shitty games sometimes, and well, maybe it's for the better that 123 Sodding Street gets the fair rep it deserves.
Honestly, I think I'm kinda over the whole killing you thing now. Even if he didn't technically commit to the blood pact after all.
Holy shit, review's done. Get the piss on out of here, Aspestose. Goodbye. I want some alone time with this busted ass chunk of plywood before I shit so hard I turn my bowels into a conveniently portable hovercraft. And hey, if chatting shit about some janky indie horror game was the only way that was gonna happen, then hey, it sure as hell was worth it.
Yeah, I forgot my gun.